Hey guys, it's Miss King. Just wanted to move on to the next section of this lesson. I believe, and I could be wrong, that you talked about imperialism yesterday. I could be wrong, but I want to go over it again just because it is a little bit more of a more abstract concept. And I wanted you to kind of, not kind of, but I don't know why I say kind of, I wanted you to understand it. Imperialism is this concept of, I don't like this term, but during this time it was kind of this idea of like world domination, like one country has everything and rules over everything and is dominant. We see this kind of today with like superpowers. Like America was once considered a superpower. Some argue that it still is, some argue that it's not. um, Russia is considered a superpower. China is considered a superpower. And also, that's subjective. It's who you talk to. But during especially the late 1900s, it was primarily um, America and Russia were considered those major superpowers. But basically, it's one country that kind of dominates the political, the economic or money side, and the cultural life of another country or region. So we can also see this. It depends on the time of history, right? So like in World War II, the dominant superpowers would be considered not until America got into, well, yes, because they didn't want to mess with America, the United States, um, the Axis powers, which would be considered Germany and were they in there for the Russia, and then Japan was considered. They were considered the major like superpowers at the time, and cultural life of another country or region. So you can see, if you remember that Empire of the Sun film we watched at the beginning, you see how the Japanese came into China and how, and even before that, you can see how the English went into China, and you could see how like Jamie's family is English, and you look around and it's not, it's the completely westernized China. China looks completely, I mean, it looks like another England. And then the Chinese were like the servants and things like that, so that they kind of took over culturally. Causes for this, obviously, raw materials, um, the desire to get those raw materials to gain excess capital. Capital is money. So Queen Isabella did this when she went to the Americas, or when she sent people to the Americas because she wanted the gold. This can be to social. You'll learn about this more next year, but it's really this drive to spread Christianity. This is also known in history called the white man's burden. The concept that it's the Europeans' job to make sure everyone is Christian. You'll learn this about next year, especially when you're talking about the Western expansion and Native Americans. They had a huge goal of, as they worked through these indigenous tribes, the Native American tribes, they would convert them. Their goal was to convert them to Christianity rather than their religion of practicing nature. They even took kids and made them go to school and completely, made them change their clothes, cut their hair, and made them conform to Christianity. I mean, then there's this idea of social Darwinism, which you'll learn way later on, but basically it's survival of the fittest. We're the strongest, we're the fittest, so we need to be in charge. Case in point, Adolf Hitler, right? Not Aryan race is the strongest, they're the fittest, they're the best, so we're going to wipe everybody else out. That's also in a very extremist viewpoint, or point of view from that, but that's the most clear example I can give you, is that just they believed they were the best, and that was it. And then political, just that desire for great power. When we talked about the 3 G's yesterday or 2 days ago for motivation, we were talking about gold, glory, and God, and that glory is that political sense. I guess, actually, if you thought about it, gold, God, glory. Some pros of this, you can read through this. If you pause, you probably, I really honestly don't remember if you did this yesterday or not. Pros is obviously you get some like food supply increases because everything's kind of unified. You kind of have you have more materials you can expand and things like that. The cons of that is that natural resources are depleted or exploited. So again, when the Europeans colonized, particularly Portugal, which is a little, well, it's not little, but it's a long little country in on the Spanish Peninsula next to Spain. They went to the West Indies, which is like the Bahamas, Haiti, places like that, and they exploited them for their sugar and created sugar plantations. I mean, that's where the slavery is. You know how in the beginning of the year I said, when we talked about in particular Roman Greece, I said like how when we hear the word slavery, our minds immediately go to southern colonized like tobacco plantations. Like that's just where when we hear slavery, that's what we see. We immediately go to that, which was not the case in Greece and Rome. Remember, in Greece and Rome, slaves had rights. You weren't allowed to you weren't allowed to injure them. There were laws against that. That's out now. Now, when we're talking about slavery, we're talking about what our mind as Americans and just as like I guess just in general as human beings goes to is that really harsh and inhumane treatment of slaves. What this also does is it promotes racism. You have that idea of social Darwinism. I'm coming into the place. I'm stronger than you. I'm better than you. I'm superior to you. You are now less than me. And it creates that racism. The self-sufficiency is a little bit lost. And then a cash crop is overemphasized. We see this in the Americas with sugar. We see this in colonized North America with tobacco, cotton, things like that. Why is racism associated with imperialism? Obviously, in this particular political cartoon, that middle head, you can read it says England. All the other little islands have names of countries on them. And then it kind of has England's all its hands all on those. So these are all the places that they kind of claimed as their own. Obviously the English roll up to Egypt and they're going to think they're better than Egyptians. Mercantilism, this is the fun one. Okay, and this one is really complicated. That's why I separated the slideshow into two. On the right you have the king, or what we consider the mother country. So in this case, most of the time, what we're talking about in this time period, England, Spain, Portugal. And then on the left, you have a colonist. A colonist is anyone, like they sent people over to that motherland to kind of cultivate it and build it up for the mother country. In this particular cartoon, the colonist says, "Oh my gosh, you were just using me." The mother country says, "Yes, I was." And you'll see why in a second. Kings or queens, monarchs, believed that wealth was the best way to build power. Power equals money, money equals power. Their idea was to buy less and sell more. If you already have it, you don't need to buy it. If you already have it and don't need to buy it, you can then sell it. So you're making more money. It's essential for the system as colonization. All right, so here's where I'm going to go through these not in complete order. All right, so here's how colonization works. You have the colonizing country here. You have the colony here. So this could be Spain or Portugal, and this could be the West Indies. This could be England, and this could be North America. What you have is we're just going to say North America. You have North America here. The colonize, let's do Portugal. You have Portugal here. Oh, I'm sorry. You have the West Indies here. You have Portugal here. Portugal wants sugar. The West Indies have the sugar. They have colonized the West Indies, so the colony now belongs to them. So if you look up here, this would be Portugal, and this would be West Indies, West Indies, West Indies. Here you can see the servants are handing Portugal goods, gold and silver, food, and raw materials. So if you can kind of picture these two together. So what happens is Portugal wants sugar. That's what the colony has. So the colony sends sugar over to Portugal for a fairly low cost. What Portugal does in this case is they take that sugar, and in this case they make rum, which is something you will never have, and they ship it to the colonies, but the colonies have to buy it. So that's like they have what they want, but they own them, and then them selling it back to them. We see this they're actually just like they're making money off of their own people. So that's like if you gave the government gas and they made a car and made you buy the gas, or that made you buy the car. Like obviously the gas is not going to cost as much as the car, but they're going to make you buy the car, so this country is making more money. So this one explains it a little bit better. You have the colonies who are for a very low price sending raw materials to the mother country. Then they manufacture that good and they sell it to the colonies for a higher price. So let's say, for example, England, North America. Wood, wood, England makes tables, sells the tables to the colony. Well, who owns the colony? The country. So they're making all the money. They're making all the money. They're making the money off their own people. Wood, table, sell the table, they make money. This money is their money. So we have this idea of triangular trade that comes about. You have what I need, I have what you need, and we go back and forth. So you can see that here. You can dig deeper into those trade routes and what they are trading in particular, but I have some better ones. This one is really nice. Now, remember, I hate this term, the New World, and you guys know I hate that because there was nothing new. It was always there, but the Europeans thought it's new because we just found it. So this is the Americas here. This is Europe. The Columbian Exchange is when the Europe gave the New World or the colonies or the Americas these things, and in exchange the colonies or the Americas would give the old world this. Now, you can even see when we look at some of these things, we see precious metals, gold and silver, foodstuffs, corn, potatoes, beans, cacao beans, which is cocoa beans, which is how you make chocolate and coffee. And then you have tobacco. Now what's funny here is, I'm sorry, chocolate, because coffee beans are here. If you look here, you see livestock, which is your horses, cows, and pigs, which weren't here, so they were giving them these. Now what's funny about this is the diseases, which we'll go through in a minute. Now what you have, all right, this is better. All right, sorry. So what you have is you have people in this climate now interacting with people in this climate. You have people that are immune to certain diseases here that aren't immune to certain diseases here. You have people that are immune to certain diseases here, not immune to certain diseases here. Now, what disease just kind of finished and is still tapering off in Europe? the plague. Remember, in Europe, you have a lot of people living in small quarters, living close to each other. What they do is they come to the West Indies and not only bring their goods with them, but they bring those diseases with them that these people are not immune to. They haven't built up that immunity. So the best ways I know how to explain it is the best way to become immune to something is like kind of having germs. The best way my mom explained it to me, and it kind of made sense as I got older, is, and now like obviously wash your hands as much as you can because we're going through a pandemic. But one thing I noticed was I had like a germaphobe friend, and she constantly hand sanitized and constantly washed her hands, but she was always sick because her immune system could not build up resistance to certain germs. So any germs that her body came in contact with, she would get sick. And that's why right now with corona, with COVID-19, they're telling people that have a weakened immune system specifically to stay home and quarantine. Because if your immune system is weakened, you do not have the ability to fight off germs or certain diseases. So those germs can cultivate in you easier. My mom always said there's a reason she let us play in the dirt. So I wash my hands, of course, regularly, but not obsessively, and I didn't get as sick as often. There's a reason that when you first start teaching, my first year I started teaching, I was sick all the time because you're around kids and germs, no offense, all the time. Now as I'm older, I don't really get as sick as often because I've built up this immunity to these germs that I come in contact with all the time. So that's why we're going to see a depletion of indigenous people. They're just going to die off. And it's not going to be by the Europeans killing them intentionally. It's going to be by the Europeans bringing diseases and that killing people off. And so that kind of counts into this. We see the start of plantations, particularly with sugar in Brazil. It also had, and it obviously had a huge impact on Africa because that's where they were bringing the slaves from. Again, for over 300 years, millions of enslaved Africans were brought to Brazil because as the population decreased, the native population, so the Brazilians that already lived there, as they began to die from being overworked and disease, they needed more labor. So they brought more Africans over. Disease. So let's get into it. If you are easily grossed out, you may not like this. You are not easily grossed out, you may like this. So these diseases were epidemic. And so in 1519, for example, in Mexico, there were about 25 million indigenous people. By 1605, so less than 100 years later, the indigenous people of Mexico were down to 1 million. So 24 million people died in less than 100 years. All right, so some of the diseases. Now, most of these you were vaccinated for when you were a toddler. So if you remember mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle saying, we got to go to the doctor and get your shots. Or and then every couple years, sometimes until you're an adult, there's rounds of shots that you have to go. That's why when teachers or when I worked recruitment in the summer, when parents would apply for or send in applications for you guys to come to our school, we ask for your shot records. So that shows us that you have been vaccinated against certain diseases, so that you're not prone to that disease and you can't carry it to other people. So kind of like that asymptomatic kind of thing with COVID-19. You may not feel the symptoms, but you may carry it. And so you may inadvertently spread the disease, that type of thing. First one's malaria. The symptoms and the causes are here for you. This is a mosquito bite. There is a shot for this. You typically don't get it until unless depending on like where you're traveling. Um, typically this is like tropical areas. You're gonna get this shot just to protect you because it is from a mosquito bite. Whooping cough. Sometimes babies have this. This is just a bacterial infection in the airways. So it can kind of cause, it causes congestion. A lot of times whooping cough, like animals can get it. My dog Jack had it when I was little, and it kind of like that whoop. And the reason it's so dangerous for babies is you have those episodes of non-breathing, obviously fever, all of that. Measles, if you got your shots, you got a shot for this. This is just a droplet transmission of the disease. Let me see if I can minimize this. I don't know. Oh well. All right. Typhus, you get a shot for this as well. This is just an infection with something called rickets. Rickets are extremely painful. You can get this from fleas or mites or lice, but if you do get rickets, it's painful. And you can see kind of the symptoms in the middle there. Smallpox, if you were vaccinated, you're good. It's just a virus. This would be you know what, smallpox is the best thing to compare smallpox to is the chicken pox, or yeah, so that's what you're going to see there. The flu, obviously, we have, I wasn't vaccinated for it, but some people, most people are. Another disease that, is quite common. Diphtheria. So this is just bacterial infection. It's nasty. It's nasty. Typically, it's if you ingest bacteria from water. So slavery then begins. We see, well, it didn't begin, but you know what I mean. This is where we see the emergence of the Middle Passage and that idea of transporting a mass amount of slaves over to the West Indies to work on those sugar plantations. Again, so I said sugar plantations, and then obviously gold and silver mines, digging for that gold, digging for that silver. When we talked about Timbuktu, we saw that process of them digging for gold. That's essentially what these people were doing with no pay. And then indigo is just a type of stone. With the Europeans coming over, we see this introduction of Christianity. And so we see the conquistadors. The conquistadors is Spanish for conqueror. And this was accompanied by Catholicism, so they brought missionaries with them. And we know from the previous lessons, like St. Patrick was a missionary. He traveled all around trying to convert people. And that's what these guys did. Okay, so this is it. Happy Friday. What I need from you is that, oh geez, brain fart. Monday, you will have a quiz over exploration. Since we did have a Maya, Inca, Aztec review, I'm not going to make you take a quiz on that, but on on Monday, you do have a quiz for the motives of exploration and the effects of exploration. So this PowerPoint, so the combined yesterday and today, and then the motives, so Wednesday's PowerPoint. You want to go over that. So that includes the 3 Gs, that includes inventions like the astrolabe and the ships. Obviously, it's going to cover diseases. It's going to cover the system, so capitalism, imperialism, all of that. So you want to make sure this slideshow that was from today and yesterday plus Wednesdays you're looking over. One thing I do want to encourage is use the notes. Use the notes. Some of you guys are just clicking, I can tell, because there's a lot of red on my screen. Okay, all of the notes or all of the questions on your homework or on your practice are either from the notes, or they are from the notes, or they're taking what's in the notes and applying it. Because I don't need you to just like regurgitate things to me. I want you to be able to understand the effects of it. So make sure you're taking your time. Teachers are looking at effort when we're looking at these things as well. So have a great weekend, stay safe, and study for your quiz on Monday.